Hey, Justin. So we've got some time to think about the Kentucky loss, go over it a little bit more, kind of put some more thoughts together, and essentially moving forward with this team. What changes can be made to essentially if any changes need to be made, or you just roll out what you've been doing and just play a little better. But let's discuss this a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think from an overall team standpoint, we talked about it last week, but the way the defense and rebounding has been going, it's just not winnable. I mean, we saw similar defense last year and just outscored everybody. But you come up against a team like Kentucky, we still scored the ball and was not nearly enough. So overall play, I think it's not to be repetitive, but got to make some improvements when it comes to the defensive end of the ball. And then as far as personnel goes, I do think that there were some positives. I thought Christian Watson was great off the bench. I think he proved himself that he should get some more minutes. I think that Keyshawn George didn't shoot a high percentage, but you could tell what kind of player you got there. And I think that Nuoko as well, big moment for him. But I think that once he settles in, he's also going to provide some size off the bench. So I think those are some positive takeaways. I think we are a little bit deeper than we thought we were. So I was happy to see that.
So just looking at the defensive numbers, and again, we discussed it, Justin. Obviously, we've discussed this. It's going into the year. It's just a big talking point with this team, rebounding and just defensive ability in general. Only 6 games in, but just kind of looking at some ACC numbers where Miami ranks in terms of some defense efficiency numbers, according to KenPom. Miami's 12th in the ACC right now. And last year they finished 6th overall in defensive numbers, 5th in the ACC play. So while their defensive numbers, maybe, they weren't necessarily great all the time last year, it's a big difference in the conference if you're 6th as opposed to 12th. And certainly Miami's going to, this factors into everything, conference games and some more non-conference. Miami's got some chances to maybe improve on their numbers during December as they get into some more non-conference games where they will overmatch their opponents. However, other ACC teams have a chance to do that as well. So, and I think we're looking at this, Justin, as a team that, is trying to compete for another ACC title or certainly get back into the NCAA tournament. And yeah, I think changes have to be made. You touched on some personnel things. I'm curious about the lineup. I've got some thoughts. I'm curious. You talked about Christian Watson. Where do those minutes come from? How do you kind of navigate that? Because essentially Miami knew they were going to go with their starting 5 heading into the year. It wasn't much of a position battle, anything like that. These were their 5, and they've played heavy minutes so far.
Yeah, great point. That's where it gets a little bit more challenging. I don't know. I mean, I haven't really seen much out of AJ Casey. I still think he's skilled, big body, and had a great reputation coming into this. So hopefully they're able to get it out of him. But for the time being, I think some of his minutes you just put to Watson. And then as far as the rest, I think it's game by game basis, depending on who's in foul trouble, who's not playing well. Unfortunately, we seem to always be in foul trouble in some way, shape, or form. So not unrealistic to depend on that. I hope that's not the case moving forward. But I agree, it is tough. Where do you get those minutes from? I think Pack didn't look so great in a situation like that. Maybe you take some of his minutes, but that's the tough part. Totally agree with you. And you're right. It's a huge difference going 12th in the conference defensively versus 6th. So lot of improvements to be made there.
When I think about some lineup changes, maybe not necessarily the starting lineup right now. And I think if we're talking about maybe some minutes, I think you look right at Bensley Joseph and what he's bringing to the table. And, there was something I asked Coach after the UCF game earlier this year about the play of the bench. And he said in his answer, and I thought this was interesting and something to watch for maybe moving forward. He said there was a time during that game he considered playing essentially 3 bigs, Matthew Cleveland kind of sliding over to the 3, bring in AJ Casey and Norchad Omier playing together. Now they didn't play together in that game, But I think that's maybe some changes that can happen with this team. I think they, and just to kind of back that up, when Jim said the reason why he didn't do that is because the guards had been playing so well. It's hard to take them out. They've been scoring the ball so well. So I'm thinking of it like with Bensley, if he's not scoring at the level and really contributing, I think they can kind of change some things defensively or just kind of change what they look like. If he's not providing offensive firepower the way that he had at times with a spot up shooting, some driving ability and things like that, if he's not scoring, then I think that there's some mismatched things that are happening with this team and will happen moving forward as they get into some of these other teams. They're going to play some big teams. They're going to play some guys that are certainly going to match up well or have advantages over Miami. So I think you can do some things there. AJ Casey actually defensively, according to Evan Mia, and his website has AJ as the second best defensive player on Miami's team. Again, small sample size, right behind Omier, but that just kind of shows you what maybe some things defensively that AJ can do. And I think one of the things when you talk about lineups, none of the bench guys, and I know Christian had his moments, and we've seen Keyshawn kind of flash at times, but none of them have really, just erupted where it's like, oh, we've got to play that guy more. What the staff might say, I think when they're given their minutes, they really have to have these big moments. But I think for Miami, again, I want to make this clear. What I'm saying with some line, I think they've got to go into some games really be willing to adjust off of their starting five if in terms of matchups, and they might give and take. Maybe you bring Bensley, put him on the bench more, in terms of minutes. Maybe you bring in a Keyshawn who has more size. Hopefully you get some more rebounding. Maybe he can match up defensively a little bit better, or Christian Watson at the wing. So maybe it's just about having different looks there, depending on the opponents. Or as I mentioned, Casey Nwaka's defensive metrics have not been good. He's actually last on that defensive rating so far. So, but that's another guy, and I think that's what for Miami to have a successful season. I think they've got to kind of make these changes, whether it's in game or whatever it might be. But I think, and it's not just putting their bench guys in. I think they've got to play maybe one bench guy in for a starter. And I think that's maybe some adjustments that they can do and really work on these, essentially matching up better against teams because of the personnel they do have. They are going to be at a disadvantage with the five that they roll out there most nights, certainly in ACC play.
Yeah, 100%. Completely agree with you. And I think that, again, the positive of this was in a crazy environment, you did see some bright spots off the bench. So it's been a lot of these guys getting 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, not really sure, why they can't be in the game longer. But I think we all got some more confidence that, okay, they can definitely handle more minutes. And now as situations present themselves, hopefully they do.
Yeah, and another thing, I know you touched on Nigel. He got a lot of criticism for his performance. Just the 2 points coming off a 28-point game, really looked overmatched on both ends of the floor. But I want to make this clear too. Matthew Cleveland has to be better. 5 points last game, but what's standing out to me with Cleveland coming into the game, averaging 17 a game. He had no rebounds last game, and now he didn't have any rebounds the last game. So no rebounds in the last 2 games for your 4-man. That cannot happen. That has to improve. He's got to be more productive. 56 minutes of playing time with 0 rebounds from your starting 4 cannot happen. I understand you're looking at the scoring numbers, but again, a team that's going to be good, have a successful season, they've got to get more production there. I want to add too, in those last 2 games, no assist either. So he's not being a playmaker. He is getting some shots, although he only took 3 shots last game. So I think Matthew's got to be better. And I think, overall, we can talk about the bench and the minutes they get, but I think all 5 starters have to play better. And I just want to make that clear with Matthew. And that's part of the problem, part of the issues. If you're going to play smaller and have a smaller 4 and 5 in terms of size, just overall height or bulk, like Matthew's not going to be a bulky 4 there, you've got to really rebound it and find ways to make yourself effective. And I feel like if that's not going to change, and that's kind of the thing when I'm talking about some lineup things, if that's not going to change, if that's going to be an issue, then you've got to put an extra big in there. And again, Bensley just might be the odd man out. not necessarily just because of his play, but just because of some lineup stuff and what the other teammates are providing the team. With Wooga and Nigel's shooting ability is certainly key. With Wooga scoring, so I think that's why Bensley, and you kind of just shuffle it down. Maybe you move Omier to a 4. Maybe his matchup is just a little too tough at the 5, and we are going to see that in ACC play. Wake Forest goes 2 bigs when they're healthy. North Carolina, Duke, they go big. Virginia's going small right now. But certainly a lot of bigs, Colorado's coming up, and they got a big guy that's going to be a bruiser as well. So I think it's just going to be one of these matchup things Miami has to really look for, going into each game and be willing to kind of play off of it, because what we saw against Kentucky, they just got completely overwhelmed. And I don't see a way. I didn't see a path for Miami to win that game. I think if they line up again, it's going to be similar. And I think that's the thing. You want to be competitive. You certainly want to feel like, if we roll out our best 5, we've got a chance to win games. And I think with the way the lineup is going right now, I don't think you could say that necessarily, or I don't think you can say that.
Yeah, it was a wake up call for sure. I think it was a needed wake up call. I mean, coming off of last season, then the hot start this year. I think it happened at the right time. I'm sure the guys on the team needed that. I think it will be great for Coach L now to take what he saw and see how we make adjustments going into this Notre Dame game here. I personally don't think he's going to change the starting lineup quite yet, but I would like to see those bench guys continue to get more and more minutes. And I do think you'll see, as a team, a lot more buy-in now that we were kind of shaken up a bit. I mean, the rebounding has to be from everybody. You mentioned Cleveland, no rebounds, can't happen. And the offensive too. We saw a lot of guys going one-on-one, a lot of individual play, which reminded me of the Final Four. You saw kind of the same thing, and it's not how this team wins. It's not how Coach L coaches. So happens, big moment, guys kind of want to try to create for themselves, but I think this would be a good wake-up call and shake-up to kind of get back to the identity, playing together on offense and defensively and rebounding the ball all together. So I think it would happen at the right time, honestly.
Yeah, Justin, let's stay more. I want to ask you more about offense, any changes there that you see, because again, a little bit stagnant at times. So I want you to discuss that a little bit more and go into detail there. I do want to make this clear. What we've seen under Jim Larrañaga, especially recently, they've had some tough losses early on and they've bounced back. Last year, lose by 18 to Maryland, and then they reel off a bunch of wins that are 13-1 going into conference. They're 4-0 in conference, 13-1 at one point after losing to Maryland there in that 5th game. So they bounced back. And then 2 years ago, 2 years ago when they lost to Dayton, and then, the 32-point loss to Alabama, with the UCF loss in there as well. And, obviously they got that going and had a great season going to the Elite Eight. So they can have games like this essentially. And I know, I know you remember one when you were playing there. But I think the adjustments, and certainly making adjustments and moving forward, and that's what they've done a good job of. Offensively, Justin, can anything there? Is there anything that you'd like to see more of offensively? Any changes that you think can be made?
Yeah, I mean, number one, I agree totally with the loss and the adversity. I was actually listening to Coach L on John Rothstein's podcast before the game. It was recorded, and he said we haven't really faced any adversity. Win or lose, this is going to be a tough environment. So kind of got that. He was spot on there. But as far as the offensive situation, I mean, I hate to keep going back to last year, but this was the drop off. You go Jordan Miller to Matthew Cleveland and Isaiah Wong to Bensley Joseph. Not saying these guys aren't great players. They are, but they're much less dynamic. They don't play as intelligently. They're not as poised down the stretch. So I don't think this is a surprise, but it definitely looked ugly as far as what to expect differently. I mean, I don't know. I think we need I do like how Keyshawn George can create a little bit more for himself versus some of these guys in the starting 5. But we'll see. We'll see exactly what changes can be made. I just thought everyone was going a little bit one-on-one, and just to get at least 3-4 passes, different ball screens, different sets, just some movement to maybe catch a defender slipping, create an open opportunity. It seemed very forced. And I don't know. I like Watson. I know I've been speaking about him this whole conversation, but I just like him out there. Just a 3-and-D type of guy is what he's kind of evolving into. Shot 2 for 3 from three, 10 points, 3 rebounds in only 16 minutes. Stats are stats, but I do think he brings a lot to the table on both sides of the floor.
And I remember talking to Christian, before the season at Media Day and talking about some defensive stuff. And he was like, yeah, I want to be a good defensive player for this team. He felt like he knew that was a point of emphasis. And, so hearing him say that, and then, after one of these games, I've been talking about it essentially after home games, I'm seeing guys shoot after games. And Christian was one of those guys putting in work, shooting threes after a game, out there going through a workout. And so it's good to see that that's a point of emphasis for him as well. And I think in that game, he only made one shot, only took one shot. I think it was something like that. So he's just working on it. And so kind of seeing what he did at Kentucky, make a couple threes there. He's certainly been putting in the work. So I think that's good. I was looking at some things. We're talking about the differences of last year and this year. And certainly that's a great comparison. And we're going to keep doing that because that team won the ACC title. That team went to the Final Four. And yeah, I think offensively, I think overall as players, certainly you're seeing, Bensley and Matt are just not those two. And I think also you're starting to see some style differences. I think Wooga is certainly much better than Wooga was last year. But I've seen some of the comparisons in terms of, you're talking about some leading scorer stuff, Isaiah and Wooga. One thing that we're seeing, that we saw with Isaiah, he could go get his own shot. He was great at that. He also created for others. And I was looking at his assist rate right at 17 last year, which is really good considering he was a scorer. Maybe in comparison, just to kind of put it in perspective, Wooga's at 9, and Wooga's essentially that's what he was last year. That's what he is right now. So he's not a creator for other guys the way Isaiah was, who could also score. And to me, I think Nigel Pack is the guy that's taken the hit on that at times. Certainly we saw him score 28 against K-State. It's not like he doesn't have it in there. I just think his shot ability, the shots he's getting is a little bit different, not playing with a guy like that. And I think Bensley, if we're talking about some changes offensively, maybe Bensley handling the ball a little bit more. We've seen Nigel handle it quite a bit, but maybe Bensley can free up, maybe run some pick and roll type action stuff to get Nigel some more spot up opportunities in a game like what we saw against Kentucky. Maybe have Nigel run off screens a little bit more and try to free him up for some shots, some good looks. He just 0 for 3 from 3, 1 for 6 overall. So I think they've got to find ways to get him involved. The 2 for 3 from Matt, they're certainly offensively, they don't want that. They've got to get more shot attempts. So I think they're going to look at that. And certainly offensively, teams are going. John Calipari said after the game, just really wants to run this team off at the 3-point line. And I think you're going to see other teams try to do that more. Jerome Tang, the K-State coach, said they wished he would have guarded Pack differently in the first half and really denied him the ball. And I think you're going to see teams kind of go to that strategy a little bit more and see how that works and make Miami kind of adjust to try to slow Miami down offensively.
Yeah. And one other thing just to add in there, got to give credit to Kentucky too. I mean, this Kentucky team looked incredible. I'm not a big fan of their teams throughout the years. I think they underachieve a lot, but this team looked different. It's early on, long season to go, but wow, what a complete team. Talk about bench production. I mean, that team looked great defensively. Like you said, running guys, I mean, off the 3-point line, like you said, Nigel looked a little bit overmatched there. That team looked good. So as much as we're focused on Miami and there's a lot of improvements to be made, I do think that was a really good Kentucky team, one of the better Kentucky teams we've seen in a while.
Yeah, really good Kentucky team, one of the best teams in the country playing on the road. I think if you just took the result as a loss, I think people would understand it. And it is just a 1-game loss, but I think that there's things within that game, not just that game, just we've talked about it kind of throughout the season.
Yeah.
Some other thing, the FIU game, certainly the offensive rebounds that they've been giving up to, teams that aren't these big teams or anything like that we've seen all year. So there's been some signs kind of all year so far with this team. And look, when we're saying these things, Justin, Coach, he knows, and he's been saying, look, we've got to be better defense and rebounding. That's going to be essentially the key of our season. And so they know what they are, and they're great at that. And it's not like they're turning their head on it and they don't understand why they're losing. They know the issues with this team, and they've just got to find some ways to try to make it better. Again, in college basketball, it's all about strengths and weaknesses. Miami has a lot of strengths with its offensive firepower. We've talked about that so much, but then, they've got their weaknesses too. And you don't want your weaknesses to overdo your strengths. And that's why losses happen. And I think that'll be the thing moving forward. So Miami's got a chance to get back on track. They do have an ACC game, kind of sneaks up on you here with the way it goes, because then they're going to go back to non-conference games, 5 of them there before they really get an ACC play. But they're going to play Notre Dame. They're going to host Notre Dame. They'll be favored in this one. They should win this one. I'm looking at Ken Palm right now. They predict an 80-65 win, a 90% chance of a Miami victory. So certainly you'd like to see Miami get out there. Anything, we'll wrap this up, Justin, but anything you're hoping to see against Notre Dame, essentially to really put this Kentucky game behind you?
I just want to see the team get back out there, have fun, play together, come out strong, and put this loss behind us. Don't let it linger. Just want to see them come out and play together, both sides of the court. I think they will. I think they should win substantially. And coming off this loss, learn from it, but put it behind us and just look back to the same Miami team we watched the last 3 years, really. They different identity this year than last year and the year before that, but a lot of similarities. They play together, they have fun, they share the ball. It's like smile on your face when you're watching the last 3 years. So I hope to see that again on Saturday.
And they've been great at that as a program, just the good vibes, essentially. I think they do. I think that they're going to be able to put this one behind them and move forward and just play a little bit better. And I think they've got these 2 games. I think the Notre Dame win, if they can win that one, then they're going to play LIU and certainly expecting a big win there. And then they've got that tough one against Colorado. So they're essentially 2 games to kind of get ready for that Colorado game. I like what I've seen from Colorado. They're going to play that game up in New York, and it'd be they're not Kentucky, but they're certainly a good team potential. They look like a tournament team to me. So that'll be a good one. Justin, I appreciate you doing this. Again, a lot of positives with Miami. Certainly still an exciting season. We'll see how things go moving forward. Long season, plenty of games to go. Certainly that one was a lot of fun to see Miami in a primetime spotlight game like that. It's unfortunate that it didn't go Miami's way, but they'll have more opportunities, certainly, and certainly looking forward to seeing them compete for an ACC title once again. So thanks, Justin. Take care, man.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.